In Ezekiel chapter 39, verse 7 in the King James Version of the Bible, we read this: "So will I make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel, and I will not let them pollute my holy name any more. And the heathen shall know that I am the Lord, the Holy One in Israel." If we examine the single chapter of Ezekiel 39, it's important to remember that in Scripture, names were more than just labels or titles. They're expressions of the character and nature of the thing or person they represented, and hold much deeper meaning than just a name. In Exodus 3:15, we were given the true name of Elohim. Made up of 4 Hebrew letters, they reveal incredible meaning to us. His name is the concatenation of the 2 Hebrew words Yah and Ruach. These 2 words together translate to "I am existence, the breath of life." But that's not all. Looking at each individual letter, their picture meanings reveal the foretelling of Yahushua's crucifixion. And his name translates to "I am salvation." And compare it to the original text found in the Tanakh, we find a very concerning problem. In Exodus 3:15, we're told his name is forever, and it's his mention to every generation. In this chapter of Ezekiel 39, he tells us that he will no longer tolerate his name being polluted. He's explicit in saying that he will make his name known to both his people and the heathen, and yet his actual name doesn't appear once. In fact, in this single chapter, his name is replaced with the word Lord 13 times in just 29 verses. If it happened 13 times in this one chapter, how many times was it replaced throughout the entirety of the Bible? We can easily answer this question by using a free tool on the website BibleGateway.com. Here you'll find a free keyword search. As you can see, you simply type in the word you'd like to search for, add any additional filters, and click search. I actually did this test more than once because the results were almost unbelievable the first time. Even now, the results shock me. The name of the Most High, Elohim, combined with the name of his only begotten Son, has been replaced by the word Lord 6,667 times. And that's just in the King James Version. Now, if this number doesn't initially jump off the screen at you, please allow me to connect the dots. In Revelation chapter 13, we're warned that the coming antimessiah will force everyone to bear his mark on their right hand or their forehead, which will allow them to buy or sell in his kingdom. His mark is revealed in verse 18, where John writes, "Here is wisdom. Let him that has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. And the number 7 is the set-apart number of Yahuwah. It symbolizes completion and perfection, as well as the days, weeks, and even years that he is set apart for us, allowing us to rest and worship him. And if this number association wasn't bad enough, it actually gets worse. If you look up the word used to replace his set-apart name, Strong's Concordance defines what Lord means. It was originally translated in the Septuagint from the Hebrew word Baal. There's no argument. Baal has 2 definitions. But there's also no argument that when the word was translated to Dominus in the Latin Vulgate, the translators fully understood its intended use in context. 84 times the word is used in context meaning ruler or owner, but in 80 other verses the text is clearly referring to the name of the heathen god worshipped by the Babylonians. And during the Israelite captivity in Babylon, most of Yahuwah's people forgot him and began to worship the pagan gods of the Babylonians, and Baal was the most powerful and wicked of them all. Yahuwah explicitly forbid the worship of Baal in Scripture time and time again, yet his people continued to disobey. Now, before I continue, I want to caution you that the following section contains graphic details regarding the practices used in the worship of Baal. This section is not intended for younger viewers, so please take this into consideration before moving forward. As part of the worship given this Nephilim god, it was demanded that a follower sacrifice their newborn babies to him. The infant, who could be no more than 3 months old, would be carried to the throne of Baal, passing through pillars of fire as they approached the god. The worshipper would then cut the throat of the child, draining his blood into a large bowl, and in a final act of unimaginable depravity, the baby's body would be burned on the altar of Baal. Following the murder of their own child, a large bird egg like that of a goose or a duck would be rolled in the collected blood. This ritual was done as they prayed to the goddess of fertility and the wife of Baal, Ashtoreth, asking for her to bless them with a child to replace the one they had just sacrificed to her husband. While both Baal and Ashtoreth have been known to many cultures by many other names, Their worship retained many of the same rituals. Take the modern tradition of dyeing eggs at Easter, for example. It pays homage to the worship of Ashtoreth, who later became known as Ishtar, the same ritual performed at the altar of Baal 4,000 years ago. And this holy day that was mandated to be practiced by all Christians by the Church of Rome during the Council of Nicaea in AD 325 replaced the feast day of Passover and still considered to be one of the most sacred days on the Christian calendar. Ashtoreth, just like the modern-day version of the false idol Mary, is known to followers as the Queen of Heaven, and whether he's known as Baphomet, Molech, Marduk, Zeus, or Nimrod, in ancient Babylon, Baal was known as the son of the dragon and the lord of the earth. And like Ashtoreth, his worship lives on to this day. Now that I've given you some context, let's revisit Ezekiel chapter 39, verse 7, and discover the blasphemy committed by the first translators of the Christian Bible. What was really written is, "So I will make my holy name known in the midst of my people Israel, and I will not let them pollute my holy name anymore. And the heathen shall know that I am Baal, the Holy One in Israel." The Apostle Paul foretells that before the day the true Messiah, Yahusha, returns, there will be a falling away of believers. Then the anti-Messiah will set himself up upon the throne of David in the temple of Jerusalem, and he will claim to be Elohim. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 4, Paul writes, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called Elohim, or that is worshipped, so that he, as Elohim, sits in the temple of Elohim, showing himself that he is Elohim." Nimrod, the first incarnation of Baal, was the first king and lord of the earth, as ruler over the Babylonian Empire he created. He set out to build a tower that reached to heaven, with the aim to seat himself above God Most High, or El Elyon in Hebrew. He believed in his heart that he should be exalted above any other god. His first attempt failed, as the Tower of Babel was destroyed after Elohim came down and confounded the language of those building it. Yet his desire to be worshipped only grew, and his efforts to exalt himself above Elohim continued. He knows that one day he will sit on the throne in the city of David, where he will claim to be the Most High Elohim. And despite also knowing he will be brought down to nothing, his lust to be worshipped is insatiable. Looking at just these few facts, one thing is clear to me. Christianity, invented by the Roman Empire, was built upon the tenets of Babylonian religion. And in order to glorify and honor the highest god of their religion, they replaced the names of Yahuwah and Yahusha with the name of their lord, Baal, the lord and king of Babylon. This deception successfully redirected the worship due only the true El Elyon to Baal. Under the leadership of these priests of Babylon, billions of unsuspecting believers in Yahusha have been deceived, unknowingly offering their praise to the name of Baal as they read their Bible, while having no idea what the true names of the Father and Son are. And to further propagate their blasphemy, these priests preach the demonic doctrine that claims it doesn't matter what their names are, because God knows your heart. To which I've said before, yes, he does. And this is what he has to say about it. In Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9, it's written, "The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it?" So what kind of thing could possibly cause the falling away of believers written about by Paul in 2 Thessalonians? How could the coming anti-Messiah possibly convince billions of self-proclaimed followers of Yahusha to fall away from him and the truth and worship the anti-Messiah? In the same chapter of Thessalonians, starting in verse 9, Paul provides some insight as he warns of a strong delusion, even him whose coming is after the work of Hasatan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause Elohim shall send them a strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned, who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. Paul is telling us at least two things very clearly. The First, those who fall away will succumb to a strong delusion and believe a lying anti-messiah. Secondly, and most terrifying, it is God himself who sends the delusion. You might ask, why would God do this? The answer is simple, because he has told the world the truth since the beginning, but because mankind loves the pleasures of unrighteousness more than they love God, they reject the love of his truth. I pray that your eyes are beginning to open as you hear the love of the truth, and you begin to see the possibility that the removal of the names of the Father and Son was intentional. It might just be a strong delusion sent from Elohim to those who reject it. Consider the following scenario. Imagine, if you will, the day the anti-messiah is revealed. He is a God-man, having supernatural powers, allowing him to perform signs and lying wonders so terrifying that men's hearts will fail them from fear. He tells the world he's come to save us from ourselves. He claims that he was the original creator of humanity, a watcher from the sky, come back to rule over the world as he created it to be. To Muslims, he'll be their Mahdi, the promised Mashiach to the Jews. And to millions of unstudied or deceived Christians, he will be Jesus. Some Christians may recognize him as the Antichrist, but then...
You don't have to be afraid, Christians. The Lord you've read about in your Bible has returned to save you.
Now let me be clear, I'm not predicting the future. I have no special gifts or powers, and I hope it's obvious to you that I am speculating on the details, but it's not hard to imagine that this could play out to be a strong delusion based on the facts we know. However, there is no speculation about these facts. The anti-messiah will be revealed. Elohim will send a strong delusion, and believers will turn away from the truth. But no matter what the delusion will look like, it will come during a time of tribulation unlike anything the world has ever seen. The disciple Peter walked with Yahusha on the earth for 3.5 years and was witness to his many miracles. Yet on the night of his arrest, Peter denied knowing him 3 times. So I ask you this, how does your faith compare to Peter's? Let's look at Ezekiel chapter 39 verse 7 one last time, only this time in a transliterated version of the Tanakh. And I'll also include verse 8. And it's written, "So will I make my holy name known in the midst of my people, Yasharel, and I will not let them pollute my holy name anymore. And the heathen shall know that I am Yahuwah, the Holy One in Yasharel. Behold, it has come, it is done, says Adonai Yahuwah. This is the day whereof I have spoken." Brothers and sisters, I pray that today is the day he has made his name known to you. Now, if you made it to this point in the video, I can only imagine what you might be thinking. I've done my best to reveal the truth to you, which is that Christianity has grown out of Babylon, and the Lord of Babylon lives on in most translations of the Bible today. With that said, from my perspective, you now have 2 options. Option 1, you can ignore the facts I presented to you and reject it completely. Put me away as a false teacher and go on living your life. Or option 2, you can do as I did when I first committed myself to seeking my Father with all I have. I set aside my pride and what I thought I knew to be the truth. I allowed myself to consider the possibility that the Lord of this world has been deceiving mankind since the beginning. If you choose option 2, then please, by all means, don't take my word for any of this. Go and test what you've learned in this series for yourself. And if you're ready to come out of Babylon with me, then watch the last few minutes of this video, and I'll share a few things that I've used to grow in my knowledge of his word. In Zephaniah chapter 3 verse 9, it's written, "But then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may call upon the name of Yahuwah to serve him with one consent." And I hope every time you see the word one, you remember that significant Hebrew word, echad, and it means more to you than it did before. With that in mind, The only way to be certain that we're reading the unmanipulated word of Yahuwah is to go to the original source. That source is the Tanakh, and it was written in Hebrew. So my first recommendation is that you learn Hebrew. I know it may sound crazy at first, but I can attest it is easier than you might think. You'll see on your screen resources I've discovered. Many of them are free, so depending on how you learn best, there are plenty of choices. My second recommendation is that as you are learning Hebrew, you find a translation that is as close to the original text as possible, especially for the Old Testament. This can be done using a transliterated Bible, which is a word-for-word Hebrew to English translation of the scriptures. The version I use is called the Et Sefer. It means divine scroll in Hebrew. Now, I have no affiliation with the company who prints it. I've just found it to be a tremendous tool and blessing in my own study. I will say it's not perfect, as with any other biblical translation, but it retains not only the names of Yahuwah and Yahusha, but the Hebrew names of all those chosen to write Yahuwah's word, as well as those chosen to be written about in it. My third and final recommendation is that you utilize what's called an interlinear transliterated tool. Both BibleHub.com and BibleGateway.com offer these for free. This tool lets you walk word by word through the scriptures, giving the Hebrew to English translations with a link to a concordance. This allows you to go as deeply as you want into every word and verse. I provided links to all these resources in the description box. To close out this video and this series, I'd like to share just a few final thoughts. Yahuwah's word tells us he has written his Torah on our hearts, and his Ruach HaKodesh, that is his Holy Spirit, will bring it to our memory and teach us all things when we seek him with all that we have. In fact, one of my personal favorite promises that he makes to us in his scriptures is that if we seek him, he will make himself known to us. We are told to make every man a liar and let Elohim be true. So don't be afraid to question things you've been taught by me or anyone else. Trust him enough to show you the truth. And I'll leave you finally with this. There is deliverance in the name of Yahuwah and salvation in the name of his son, Yahusha. May you be blessed by the peace of Yahuwah that surpasses all understanding and strengthened by the Ruach HaKodesh to walk in the way of Yahusha HaMashiach. Until next time, Shalom.